Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the FGA Report covering Florida, Georgia, and Alabama high school and college football. This edition is going to discuss A.J. Harris, the corner from Phoenix City, Alabama, one of the top recruits in the class of 2023. Based on what I did last time and with this report and many to come thereafter, going to really kind of lean on the class of 23 and 24. The class of 22 is more or less over with. There'll be a little bit of shifting around with that in the month of January once that dead period kind of ends and the coaches convention concludes in early January that they have each year in Texas. But for this report, I picked AJ as an example. He's one of the top 10, 15 players of the country, pretty much by about anybody's account that's seen him live, and myself included. I saw him at Under Armour last March on the 21st of last year. And the reason that I picked him isn't just physical skill. It's his off the field mentality, his family, his atmosphere around him, everything about it tells me he has as high a ceiling as anybody long-term to make it to the NFL. And I want to talk a little bit about what it is to make it to the National Football League and the things that are around you as a player, as a family member, etc., that you need and you don't need. A lot of it probably won't make people happy, but it's just the way it works. The way the financial world and commercials and the NFL and everything works is very cookie cutter. It is very, 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 very narrow. If you don't want to be a part of that, that's fine. You don't get paid. That's it. There is no other checkbox. It's this one or goodbye. So this is why I used AJ. I know him, been around him, and I can tell you that he gets it. And God blessed him with a lot of skills on top of that. So without further ado, I'm going to go to a screen here in a second and talk about some of the opportunities that, he's been blessed with, and he's been trained to play corner. There's a little bit of video I have of him during Under Armour, and then there's a little bit of huddle video I'm going to show as well. But most importantly with him, again, is the off the field stuff. And I'll come back to that here in just a moment. The point that really is important to note here about him, he's not just your guy that is going to, shall we say, make a few plays. He's a guy that is going to make a lot of plays. And it's hard to sometimes understand what a kid can do unless you have the opportunity to just physically be around him. So for that, I apologize. It is what it is, but he's a very special talent. And here's the first full video. This is something I just put together on iMovie. AJ's about 6'1". He's about 180 pounds going into this past season. I haven't talked to him since the end of the year, but his footwork, he's the one on the left here. His footwork is very unique for a kid as long as he is. As you see him, he comes back out of his back pedal on that first step very well. Then he explodes forward right out of it. He moves a little bit more like a 5'9" kid, to be honest with you, than he does a 5'10" kid. And with that, there's something else to kind of note. Again, he has been trained to do this. It's not just a kid that just went out there and it was just natural and nothing else. It's natural and training. So he's had both, and that's an advantage. The other part about him that's interesting, he played at a high school this year, Glenwood, that quite frankly is not the greatest program in the world. And he's done a pretty good job of making the most of that opportunity, but I expect him to probably end up being a kid that will do better once he's around even more competition. If he transfers, if he doesn't, it's not going to matter. Or if he goes to Alabama, USC, Ohio State, whatever it is that he ends up doing, he can pick his school. This film was kind of interesting to me because right there it shows some physicality, but it shows him playing different positions. And when you play at a smaller school and you're a great athlete, they put him with the Wildcat there. They do different things with him just to get him the ball. He's a team player. I don't think that he's a kid that really cares. He just wants to win. From talking to him, I learned a little bit about that last March. But he just likes to challenge. And as you see here, again, just natural athlete. He could play running back in college. That's pretty obvious. They put him out at receiver. I mean, at that level, there's nobody that's going to cover him at like the 1 or 2A level in the state of Alabama or anything close to that. So he's a kid that physically it's obvious. Okay, he has skill. AJ Harris has plenty of skill. Is it a situation where he could just walk onto a field and play right away in college? No, again, he's been trained. But here's the part that's more important in regards to the word training. AJ, when he was communicating with me at the time, I think he was still 16. He was technically still a sophomore in high school. And it was just generic conversation. I interviewed him a little bit. And the funny part about him was it sounded like just the way he communicated, his comfort level, more like he was 28 than 16. I don't know if he'd been trained on being interviewed, but most kids, like at an Under Armour event, a 7-on-7, even if I just hold up the recorder and listen to him, it's interesting because their body language, they get a little nervous. If I take my phone and I'm video recording, it gets really nervous. People just don't like to be interviewed. Most people don't like to be in front of a camera. I'm kind of an exception. It doesn't bother me at all. Most people hate it. There's a report I read a long time ago. Over 30% of people said they would rather be killed than have to give an interview or a stand up in front of the room presentation, if you will, to their peers. And I'm like, that's crazy. But people just have a fear of it. AJ at his early stage of life is already comfortable. That's number one. For any recruit out there, for anybody, I don't care how much you dislike it. Get over it. You're costing yourself a ton of money, and it will kill you in interviews. The people on the other side of that desk, like me, we are trained to say certain things to figure out stuff based on your body language, not what comes out of your mouth. That's the extra. But your body language, your eye contact, looking at a person, whatever it may be, is vital. AJ's a kid. He was just chill. It didn't bother him. I could ask a question about a college, about his technique, about his high school. It didn't matter what I asked him. I'm going to try to see if I can find that, see how long it was. But it's interesting that he was that way as a kid, as a sophomore in high school. Most of the juniors and seniors that I interview, not even close. And it's kind of sad in a way, but I don't know. It just is what it is. And yeah, I can't find it. I thought I had it on my phone, but at any rate, the point is this: if you're going to be a kid that moves up the ladder, he has a ton of skill. I still got a picture of him up here on my other screen. He has a ton of skill. Even if he didn't have the off the field acumen that he does, he would be elevated. One, he plays corner. It's by far the hardest position to recruit because there's just not enough of them. There is no second or third place. Corner is by far the hardest. And number two, he has natural length. He's a 6'1" kid. That helps tremendously. So he has all the attributes right down the middle that the NFL, the college, Nick Saban or anybody that would want a player. Marcus Freeman, Billy Napier, everybody's going to recruit this guy like it's the last thing they can do. His recruitment, I think, will be a microcosm of what 2023 recruiting and beyond is going to become. As more and more people are hired in these athletic departments across the country to study and learn what social media does for their program or hurts it, and that's they'll never admit it, but that's the bigger thing. They're going to look at it a little bit differently. Not going to go into a lot of specifics, but there were a few kids in the class of 22 that just signed on the 15th of December that acted like complete idiots. And I mean complete idiots on their official visits. There are schools that are really angry at high school programs, at the parents, the player, etc., based on how kids acted and destroyed stuff, etc. That gets back around because these schools all talk to each other. AJ Harris, again, I got him on my screen over here. He's not going to be one of those kids. Out of every recruit that I've studied in the class of 23, and I started really early. I started last February into early March, but prior to Under Armour, just watching film, learning about kids, profile pages, their Twitter handle, what they do or they do not have in their background screen on Twitter, when all the stuff was going on over the last year in political things. Yes, that matters a lot. Don't do it. Don't hit send. Don't put up the photo. Don't like it. Don't do it. Neutral is what you want. These things matter because boosters matter, because TV revenue matters based on advertising. Advertising wants everybody happy, both sides of the political realm. Yes, sorry, it's just the way it is. If you want to be a part of that world, neutral, keep your mouth shut, straight ahead. If you don't, that's fine. Even a kid as talented as AJ can get derailed in a heartbeat if you don't do it. I don't get to make that decision, but that's how the world works. And if you want to elevate yourself, forget the political stuff. Look at how a young man talks at any school. You could use AJ as an example too, but look at how a young man talks at any school. You can watch interviews on any athletic website. Pick Michigan, pick UNLV. It doesn't matter. You can go and find them. When we do interviews, I cover UCF. When we do interviews, there's only certain kids they'll put in front of the microphone. It's just true. Image is everything. And the kids that don't get to do it, if they're good enough to play in the NFL, they lose a ton of money. They lose a ton of leverage, and their chances of getting a second contract, which is the biggest, traditionally speaking, for a player, is reduced significantly. They want a person that they can trust in front of the microphone, not to embarrass the logo. They call it protecting the shield in the NFL in general for the just flat out NFL logo. But the logo meaning the Jacksonville Jaguars, Cincinnati Bengals, Dallas Cowboys, whatever it is. If you want to make it there, you need to figure out a way to act in this manner. Last point about AJ, and then I'll wrap this up. If you're really looking for an opportunity to get better and to do something, you got to go out and challenge yourself. The interesting part about him, like I said earlier, he plays at a small school or played. He went to Under Armour and dominated. Wasn't too big for him. That part I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised because he played at a small school. A lot of times when kids move up, it's not very good. And it's, quite frankly, very unique when they're able to do it. And for him to do that right away is big. But even if you aren't in a situation, you don't have any offers yet, or you're a kid or a parent or whatever, it's around somebody that not necessarily being under recruited, but maybe that's the perception. What you do in the big moment counts, because when a college coach finally gets a chance to watch your film, or maybe it's just the intern in that office, tops, absolutely tops. You're going to get about 5 clips to watch. The order in which you put your highlight film, the order in which you understand what it's like to be the prospect being scrutinized matters. In other words, put your 5 best plays to start the dang thing. And not, when I say best play, let me be very clear. You running over somebody that is not even in the same realm as you talent-wise is not a clip. That's a wasted clip. I don't care if it's a strip, sack, fumble, score. If you went against an offensive tackle that's terrible and it's obvious, or a tight end that's terrible and you're a D end, that's not going to help you. Did you whip the guy in front of you with technique? Yay or nay? That's a checkbox. That's one of the very first things they're going to look at. And 2, your effort. A lot of guys are talented. Did you make the play based on effort and technique? If you can say yes, that's probably one of your top 5 plays. So scoring's great, but how did you score and why did you score? That's really what it comes down to. With that, I'm going to wrap up this edition. AJ Harris, in my opinion, is the best player in terms of long-term potential that I've seen live. Obviously, I've only seen maybe like 15 out of the top 50 kids. I live in Florida, so that's helpful, but there's a lot of kids to go see, and I'm going to fly around, see a lot of different players this year, Arch Manning and some of the kids up north, Dante Moore. There's all kinds of players I want to see and get a better perspective of what it's like, and then compare them to some of the kids down here in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, the areas that I most often frequent. So with that, everybody have a great day. I'm going to have another report coming out in the next 24 to 48 hours. So take care. Have a great one.